America First Insight has not sponsored this video, but they're getting a shout out anyways. You need to go to America First Insight, tell them you strongly approve of tariffs, bam, and then you go and vote, bam. That's how they know your IP address, that's a patriot. America First Insight scorecard tells you how well or poorly your local congressman is doing on certain issues like immigration or economy. You have a President Trump approval rating, and their articles, my favorite one so far, this one explaining the big, beautiful bill and how it's the best legislation our incompetent Congress could possibly put out. But yeah, go ahead and even sign up if you want for exclusive articles, early access, members only reports, and special discounts on their merch, less than $3 a year. My Father's Day steak was $26. What is wrong with this country? But there's nothing wrong with America First Insight, which is why you should give them and RAP lots and lots of money. Okay, so we're going to go ahead to the video right here. JD Vance had put out an article. He retweeted it from Daryl E. Paul from Compact Mag. Mass immigration lowers fertility. Alarm bells should be screaming at you in regards to what you have been told by elites, by Democrats, by people who are authority figures over you for decades. They taught this at university when I went there. We're going to go ahead, take a look at this article, go a couple paragraphs in, and just really kind of sit in the stench of this possible revelation that released on May 30th. Policymakers and analysts across the West believe that immigration is the solution to the problem of low fertility. If natives won't produce enough of the next generation, the difference will simply have to be imported. This wisdom bursts forth every time immigration restriction rears its head. Low fertility countries, it is said, require large levels of immigration to stave off population decline, rapid aging, and economic decrepitude. But the recent experience of Czechia casts doubt on this common sense. Immigration, particularly at levels large enough to make a demographic difference, is not a solution to demographic decline, but instead, it's accelerant. Again, there are very few excuses that we are offered for the mass invasion of our country. One of them is this, but other than that, there's only one or two large excuses for changing the fabric of your society, changing who your neighbor is to a total stranger, changing the price of everything, your job access, changing everything about your life from the friends you meet at school to your future being basically sold away to foreigners for a very low price. It is a betrayal of you, the average American, by the heavily subsidized poor and the very, very rich of this country. Again, it's not necessarily class warfare. It's mostly the bottom and the top destroying the middle. And that's really the reality of it. But let's go ahead and keep reading. You guys know what's wrong. But let's start tearing apart the largest myth about mass migration right now. In the 90s and early 2000s, Czechs experienced a typical post-communist demographic crisis. Every year from 95 to 02, the country's population shrank. Between 94 and 2005, deaths outnumbered births as the country's total fertility rate. A projection of the number of children the average woman alive today will have over her lifetime collapsed by 40%. Now again, very scary number, which would cause people to think it needs to be fixed. And at the same time, understand they did not jump to mass migration, because nobody has ever jumped to mass migration in the entire course of humanity as a solution to declining population like this. That's just not a thing people did. And it's a thing people shouldn't do. But this was kind of typical of the Soviet Union, post-Soviet states. They were having a very hard time getting into an entirely different economic system. So Czechia's fertility had always been above or near replacement in communist times. Under democratic capitalism, however, it fell to levels that demographers call lowest low, under 1.3 for 11 years. And if you guys aren't into demographics or anything like that, the fertility rate that is required for a population to replace itself is roughly 2.5, 2.4, 2.6. Some people say 2.6. Reason is because you need 2 kids for every 2 parents, and you need 2 parents to make a baby, right? So 2 kids for every 2 parents. And there needs to be another half for accidental deaths, for murders, and all that other stuff. Otherwise, 2.5, you're replacing yourself. Anything under that, you're kind of screwed. Czechia's fertility has always been above or near replacement in communist times. Under democratic capitalism, however, it fell to the lowest low. Then a remarkable demographic revival took place. Czechia's fertility emerged from lowest low territory in 2006, and by 21 had increased to 1.83, half a child more per woman. A rebound among the largest ever recorded. Not even COVID could stop it. In 21, the country's fertility rate was higher than France's, Europe's traditional fertility leader. After 12 years of natural population decrease following the end of communism, Czechia experienced more births than deaths in 11 of the next 13 years. The national media dubbed it a Czech baby boom. Observers credited the turnaround to an overhaul of family policy in the early 2000s. Parents received an increased state allowance, expanded the child tax credit, more flexible systems for parent leave, and expanded state support for fertility treatments. The country became a model of success. By that, they mean increasing in population. Obviously, I would rather prefer adoption to fertility treatments. I have empathy if you or someone who you or a friend has fertility problems. Join the club. There's a lot of people, not me personally. I'm so fertile. I'm very fertile, I promise. But I have family members that struggle with it. It's just that I don't believe that you can justify morally to God like killing 12 or 13 babies every single time you have one. It just doesn't make sense to me. And that's my logic. I'm anti-abortion. Anti-IVF naturally flows from that. Unless, of course, you're a deeply, deeply pragmatic Republican, as our current administration and probably our administration going forward into new future terms probably will be. Still wrong. Still don't support it. That's my personal opinion. God bless you if you disagree, but I don't believe in that mountain of corpses ever being justified. Then the baby boom collapsed. In 22, the total number of births fell 9%, followed by a 10% fall in 2023, and another 7.5% decline in 24, in just 3 years. So remember, they had completely recovered. And then in 3 years, both births and fertility fell 25%, a collapse as large and rapid as the one experienced after the end of communism. Czechia's total fertility rate last year was just 1.37, an almost total reversal of the country's fertility recovery. The natural population decline returned and in 2024 reached its highest annual level since World War II. Unlike the fertility crash in the 90s, the current one hasn't been caused by economic depression. In fact, Czech real GDP is up 4%. GDP is doing great. People suffering. Czech GDP, fantastic. A respectable pace for Central Europe, it has instead been caused by mass immigration. Russia's February invasion of Ukraine led to historic immigration surge throughout Central Europe, but nowhere was it as dramatic as in Czechia. According to the Czech Statistical Office, 350,000 immigrants entered the country in the first year of the war, a figure equal to an astounding 3.3% of the country's population at the time. According to European Union figures, the country granted 460,000 people temporary protection in 2022, equal to an even more remarkable 4.4% of national population. Net migration remained at high levels in 23. As of March, Czechia had the largest number of Ukrainian refugees as a percentage of population of any country in the EU, more than 20% higher than second place Poland. Of course, nearly every country in the European Union today has a declining fertility rate. It would be wrong to conclude that all of Czechia's fertility crash is due solely to mass immigration. Yet no country has had a larger absolute decline in fertility since 21 than Czechia, and only Estonia has a larger relative decline. None has experienced a fertility reversal as abrupt as Czechia's. Even as net immigration numbers have come off the boil of 22, they remain 2 to 3 times higher than their pre-22 levels. fertility declines show no sign of stopping. So really, there is only one variable that meaningfully changed in this equation, and it was mass migration. Mass migration has destroyed the fertility rate of the Czechs. Czech. I'm trying not to call them Chechens or Chechenians. You know, those people over over by Russia. No, the Czechs have seen a complete collapse of their recovery, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. It is actually a crime against that country, just like it's a crime against this country, because the sovereignty of the country is being questioned and replaced without the consent of the people the government purportedly represents. It's horrible. It's like if a medieval king just was like, hey, you know, we're not going to fight anymore against like that neighboring kingdom. We're just going to let them all like take your jobs and hang out, and we're just going to let them like just hang, you know. You don't have to do anything. Actually, you know what? Get out. I don't like you. Can you just stop reproducing? I'm going to replace you with the other kingdom's people. This is like complete nonsense. No one would ever do this. And it obviously doesn't benefit the king in this situation, our governments. They just do it because the people in those positions make money off of it. That's all it is. The government doesn't benefit. We don't benefit. Nobody benefits. It's just the self-interest of the people holding positions of power. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Your country is worth so much more than whatever the hell they're selling it for to these poor economic migrants. And as we can see with the Czech situation, these Ukrainians, they're not even necessarily poor, and they're not even necessarily a different race. They're a different ethnicity. But, you know, Czechs and Ukrainians, both still Slavic peoples. It didn't even matter that there was proximity involved. They did not end up congealing because they're from two different societies and two different cultures, and you cannot magically replace people. People are unique and wonderful, and so are groups of people are unique and wonderful, and you cannot magically replace one with the other. You cannot replace all of the wonderful engineers and innovators of the 19th and 20th century American Republic with random people from South America. South America tried over and over and over again in several places to have the kind of country that we do, and they failed over and over and over again. Is it because they're bad people? Not necessarily. I don't think so. It's because they're a different group of people, and they're capable of different things. And that's okay. We're all different. It's okay to be different. But it's not okay to pretend we're all the same. And it's not okay to give away a certain group of people's country to random strangers just because it has businesses, increased GDP, and because it fills your pocketbook. Everybody knows it's unsustainable. And people who care about the long-term results of this country, no, we have to stop. The causal connection between mass immigration and a falling native fertility is somewhat mysterious. A common hypothesis points toward a housing effect. Some housing prices increases have negative fertility effects. Duh. You need a house to put the children in. If you don't have a house, you can't have a family. A number of studies from the United States show that immigrant inflows drive up housing prices in the short run, as J.D. Vance discussed at the Freedom City Conference. Research on the 1980 Mariel boat lift showed that a 7% increase in the Miami labor force in 1 year caused an 8 to 11% real increase in rents that in turn caused a 3-year fertility slump as steep as 14% among the city's renters. So yes, if you did not do that equation in your head, housing prices go up, make your rent go up. That is something that you should inherently understand, but sometimes people don't get it. Yes, the price of housing affects the price of rent. It changes the equation for the person offering you rent. Another hypothesis emphasizes household income. An immigrant surge can drive down wages, especially at the lower end of the wage scale, making natives poorer and thus decreasing their fertility. Yet the unemployment rate for Czechs aged 25 to 54 is the lowest in the European Union. and has even fallen slightly. So they have jobs. It's not necessarily the jobs, but the housing. The housing prices going up really hits these people. And so that kind of helps the Ukrainian migration make more sense. If Ukrainians have flooded the market, whether they have a lot of money or just a little bit of money, if they're buying houses in Czechia, then it affects everybody. The Czech Republic is damaged by this. Materialist hypotheses are not the only ones we can entertain. Studies have shown significant fertility effects from all manner of ephemeral cultural and political events, whether elections or sporting matches or papal visits. Why wouldn't a mass immigration event provoke a fertility reaction far greater than an electoral or sporting defeat? Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, support for the Czech right populist party and ANO has been on the rise, reaching an all-time high of 35%. ANO's popularity has begun to flag in recent months, only due to the challenge from Freedom and Direct Democracy, SPD, a party even farther on the right. Both ANO and SPD hold restrictionist positions and win the support of right-wing populist voters, motivated by feelings of cultural dispossession. Cultural dispossession and powerlessness. A preference for homogeneity over heterogeneity, and fears over national decline. Listen, heterogeneity is nice in food. It's nice to have different bites of stuff and different food. But homogeneity is really nice for societies because you know what to expect. You have no anxiety or fear. Law and order is stable. Crime, statistically speaking, increases in areas where there is low homogeneity. The less people have in common, the more they feel comfortable committing crimes against each other, the more comfortable they feel lying to each other, the more comfortable they feel generally stealing from each other, honestly. And that translates not just from physical looting, but it goes into business practices, and it goes into how you're treated when you apply for a job and go to work for someone. Changes everything. So, listen, I'm not one of these identitarian types. I'm not an identitarian, and I'm not what you would call a wheat nationalist. I'm trying to say it weird for the YouTube censors. I'm not one of those people. I'm really not. But I want American stock to feel comfortable in their own country. What are American stock? 90% white people, 10% foundational blacks, to 10 to 13%. And then a very small population of border Hispanics that never left their country after we took over. That's the stock of this country, plus Native Americans. But they're so small and insignificant. Who cares? Yeah, those are the people, and they should feel comfortable in the country that belonged to them up until a couple decades ago when random globalists decided that they didn't own their own country anymore. You know, we can hang out with all these other people that you brought in, but how are we going to feel comfortable? How are we going to have homogeneity? How are we going to have low crime? How are we going to have functional society? And the answer at the end of the day is the people who can't be American, who don't even try to be American, who don't love America, who don't learn English, who don't contribute rather than take from the tax pool, they have to get out. They have to get out now. And more than that, for the morale, for the spiritual morale of the country, our politicians have to choose us over them. They have to choose the people, the citizens of the United States, which includes American stock, and they have to reject the world. There's a lot of other reasons that this system does not function if you don't do that. But at the end of the day, there's a very big spiritual problem with abandoning the people that built your country and trying to replace them with strangers who, let's be honest, haven't accomplished a tenth of what this country accomplished. Now, does my ancestor being really cool automatically make me a good person or make me a productive person? No. But statistically speaking, we're going to have more of those same kind of people. Genetics is real. Passing them down is real. And if you want the people that we had in the 19th century to do cool stuff, you got to find their posterity. They have the same brains. They have the same stuff. They have the same tics and habits. Whatever's passed down biologically. And if you encourage them instead of placating them and like making them hedonistic pieces of crap, and you actually create a system where they are rewarded for productivity, where they're rewarded for job seeking, where they're rewarded for working their way up in the world, economic mobility, they will probably do a lot of the same things that their ancestors did. But yeah, no, the spiritual, the morale, it can destroy a country. And I'm just telling you that from a historical perspective. You really want to know why the Greeks today do not behave like the Hellenic Roman emperors, the Hellenic princes, the Alexander the Great, all those philosophers. You know why they don't act like the same people? Because like they spent like 4 centuries being crushed and humiliated and treated like trash. You get like how that harms someone? They got independence in the 19th century, but then they were living on these tiny rocks until they expanded their territory. Now, why would Greeks feel in that situation like they were still Greeks, like they were still the people that had empires, that they were still the people that conquered everything, or that they were philosophers or artists? Because you destroyed their spirit. And humans just aren't physical material bodies. They're body and soul. You don't have to believe in God to understand that there are abstractions beyond the material realm that matter. And this is one of those times. At the end of the day, we are seeing a connection between cultural despair and fertility decline. It's not necessarily direct. Young Czechs of childbearing age are not right-wing populist voters. Their parents and grandparents are. Those who despair over the demographic future of the nation turn out to be the ones least able to do anything about it. Their worries drive support for right-wing populism, which in turn provokes a left-wing backlash from the young that trends towards anti-natalism. If you guys don't understand anti-natalism, that's the end of any country. If you stop having kids, you stop having a country, okay? This is especially true among young women, especially the demographic that needs to buy into the populist fertility project for it to succeed. In a period of low and declining fertility, many conclude that mass immigration is the only solution to population decline, societal aging, and welfare state collapse. But simply on demographic grounds, mass immigration may be a cure, worse than the disease. Rather than resign themselves to importing the next generation, policymakers should ask why natives have lost so much faith in the future. And that really sums it up, doesn't it? It sums up what our mission is, it sums up who we are, but it sums up the lie we've been told, the deep, deadly, deeply betraying lie that somehow importing a gajillion foreigners is going to save fertility. It's not. You have to actually improve the lives of the people that are here. You have to make it possible for them to purchase long-term goods, not food, housing, medical care, college, or trade school. Lots and lots of trade school, please. You have to have those tangible goods that improve their value as people on the market and that improve their standing, because a house lets you have kids because you have a place to put them. Housing, all of these things that appreciate and value and make every family a little kingdom inside of our republic. Those are the things that grow the country, that grow the GDP organically, that grow the fertility, and that make everybody happy. Everybody's happier when they can actually afford things and when they can actually have children and when the country's government doesn't despise and discriminate against them. Okay? It's actually really simple. This is not only suicidal, but as it turns out, pretty meaningless at the end of the day too. You didn't need to do it to us, but you've done it. And now you deserve to never have power ever again. And you guys, what you can do, if you didn't like the video, please like it, but tell your friends. Tell your friends about the betrayal that has taken place. Send them this article and make sure they understand what we must do. We must empower the citizen. We must give every American a chance at succeeding. And if we do that, and we kick out these people that hate us, we're all going to do so much better. All right. That's my piece. That's my shtick. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you want to hear about next, what you want to hear from Rap or me or anybody else on the channel. Give us video ideas. Otherwise, I hope you have a very blessed rest of your day. Godspeed.